Okay, people. So today I am joined by Bears Rebecca Fonté to talk about her new film, How Far Does the Dark Go? Bears
Hi,
Rebecca.
Kevin. Thanks for
Thank
having me.
No worries, man. Like, how far does the dark go? That's a question in itself, right?
I was hoping that someone would read the title and go, "Well, I don't know. I would like to know that answer. I will see that movie."
Because every day you turn on the news and you go, "Oh, it's getting dark. It's gone darker. I didn't think it would go this dark, but it's gone darker."
Exactly, exactly.
Uh,
Well, there's a song by an artist I really love, Anya Morena, called "How Far Does the Dark Go," and it was a song I listened to over and over again as I was working on the screenplay. And then I started putting it into the film. The film originally had a different title, and although it was always a temporary title, I just didn't know what we were going to call it. And then eventually, I was like, "Well, I need this song to be in the film," and I think that this is the central question of the film when you're talking about a vampire and a relationship that somebody's being pulled into. That is the question: is how far are you going to go into the dark when you don't know
mm,
what's on the other side? So I was very lucky. I reached out to Anya and I asked her if we could use the song in the film, and she actually had a song in the Twilight soundtrack. So it
oh,
all kind of came together, that she got to come back to a vampire film.
mm, interesting. Now, the question is though, what happens if she says, "No, you cannot use my song"?
Well, I think that I would just be really sad, and I'd have to find it. Then it would just be a little Easter egg for me as to why I had called it that. Because it's just a question. It's a sentence. You can't copyright a sentence.
No.
If I didn't use the song, then no one would know that was why. But I had. I had met her before, and I had been on her Patreon for a very, very long time. And so I kind of felt like she might, be willing to at least consider it. So it was a
Mm.
chance I was willing to take when I started to go down that road.
Oh, awesome. No, I mean, it's always interesting finding out how a film got its title. You know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes there's films and the title is so, it feels kind of random, right? Or it's just sometimes it's a little generic, but then you hear why and you're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." So it's just, yeah, it's always an interesting story, I feel.
Yeah, I wanted something that would be really memorable and kind of just live beyond the film itself. Like it is just a central question that we want to know the answer to. I guess I was thinking a lot about the film "We're All Going to the World's Fair," which
Ah,
is like it's like, well, now I know what that film's about. It's about going to the World's Fair, right? And so there's a benefit and a problem to that title, and so for mine, I was like, well, I want a film though that gets like it sums up the mood of the film without saying anything specific.
mm. Now, is this your second feature? Is I Crime classed as the first?
That's correct. I Crime was the first feature. That was about 12 years ago or so. So this is my first feature in so long that
Yeah,
it
it's been
really
a
feels
while.
like I feel like a new filmmaker. I'm a very different person than I was back then. But I've also made a lot of shorts between now
Yeah,
and then. So like my
some
style
TV
has
stuff.
really developed, and I would say this is the first feature that is sort of that comes from the how I kind of developed what my look is for my kind of films.
Right, right. And what made, How Far Does the Dark Go the second story that you wanted to put out feature length, right? Why this?
I for years I ran a science fiction and horror film festival in Austin, Texas, called Otherworlds.
Ah,
And over the course of 10 years, I saw all sorts of great films and projects that came through. And there was one short film that came through from a filmmaker who had actually had a feature the year earlier. And so she brought in this short. She was the producer and she played the lead vampire on it. And it was a short film about two women who were raising two women, one of whom was a vampire, and they were raising a small child, about a 9-year-old child. And it was a short film, and I got to be good friends with the woman behind that, Chloe Caroll. And as we talked, it became apparent that she wanted to make a feature out of that idea. And eventually I got involved and we started to work on the script, and the script became something I would say pretty different from the short. But it held at its center this idea of, what is it like to be a mother as a vampire to a child who's human? And then what is it like to be in a relationship with a human where you're trying to have a loving relationship with somebody from the real world, and you're bringing them into your vampire life, and how do those two things conflict? So I think those are the two things that were in the short that I really gravitated towards and wanted to expand upon in the feature. And then a big part of it, to the development over the years, was just taking that child, and it became very early in the process, it became a much older child, so that now you've got a woman who looks like she's in her late 20s raising a child who's looks like he's in his early 60s. So that was fun. And then also bringing in the sort of style and overt references and tone of a kind of a movie from the 70s, from the vamploitation European art house scene.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Like, is like vampires, do you kind of enjoy those type of stories?
I love vampire stories. I think I got to love them even more working on this film. I watched a ton of them. But I think what I love most about a vampire film, even going back to the 1930s, is when you had a female vampire, you always had the ability to make a very strong, proactive female character in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get to in many other films. And so you've always got someone who is making their own choices and empowered and is able to basically destroy someone else's life, or maybe make decisions for them if they're able to influence and chant them and use them. So you had the ability to have a much more complicated character as a female character, I think, in many for many years as a vampire than you would normally. Even in movies directed by men that had sort of a male gaze to them, you still end up getting these very well-drawn protagonists or even antagonist characters that are vampires. And so I wanted to kind of take that. That was exciting to look at that in a new modern way.
Okay. Yeah, I think, right, when you think about that, right, it makes sense, because a vampire is supernatural, right? So it's super strong, right? So when you've got a female character beating the living shit out of a load of dudes, you'd be like, well, a vampire, so of course that's gonna happen. But it doesn't always make sense when you've got a real tiny woman taking, like, you see, like, you've got this big hench dude like Dave Bautista punching this little girl, and then she gets up and beats him up, and you're just like, I mean, she'd be knocked out. Like, anyone's gonna get knocked out after taking so many punches. But when it's a vampire, you'd be like, yeah, obviously. That makes sense.
And that's what's fun about a vampire film, is you get to develop your own world. What are the rules of this? What are the vampire rules? How can you hurt a vampire? What powers do the vampires have? What does the rest of the world respond to with vampires? Do they know vampires exist? Have they always known? There's all these questions that come with making a vampire movie, and the audience brings in their own preconceptions, and so you both have to speak to those, but also you have to respond to them as well. And maybe your choices are different, and you have to explain, how that is different. And I think a great vampire film usually will be great because of the choices that were made that make those vampires distinctive.
Yes. I mean, there's a big thing with that, right? Because when you're playing in something that has lineage and lore, there are those rules. But every now and again, right, someone can come along and fuck with those rules, right? Like with oh my god, and I just saw it and my mind's gone friggin' Danny Boyle and Alex Garland with 28
days later.
days later.
Yeah.
And suddenly, because like you're never afraid of that with zombies, because you're just like, I'll just outrun that fool. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Right. And then you're like, wait, they're Usain Bolt now? Fuck.
Right.
This ain't fair.
Yeah, I love that. You know, and then the other thing I love is when somebody comes up with an idea that it's like, oh, like I never thought how obvious that is, like 30 Days a Night, where it's like, okay, vampires, but yeah, it's only nighttime always. Yeah. Right. Yes. So there's no, you're right. So it's that little twist of like, well, in this movie, the vampires are in northern Alaska. That's what makes it different. So for me, like a big part of the setting, a big part of this film is the setting and those subway tunnels that are underneath Philadelphia that you can go around the city for miles and come up and hunt and then go back down and people wouldn't know. There's all these empty subway tunnels below Philadelphia that are still there and they're sealed up.
Same with London. Same with London.
Yeah.
You know, so because a lot of times when they're filming something and it's on, you know, supposedly a normal line, it's one of these, you know, forgotten stations that are there. But you're thinking, oh, it's it. But yeah, it's because there's so many of these places that are being blocked off or were used for the Royal Mail. You know what I mean? So there's all these tunnels. I think in Toronto as well, there's like the underground walkways for when it's like super cold. Like, you know
yeah, there's long stretches where you can walk in Toronto. That was one of the first things I noticed when I was here in January. I was like, oh, I want to set a vampire movie here because you can get, 12 miles underneath the ground without ever coming up. So yeah, I think it just, whatever your vampire, what your rules are, then you figure out, well, what is the most interesting place for that vampire to exist? And how does that change? Like one of the things with Philadelphia too is that Philadelphia is this old city, so there's a lot of history there. But a lot of it, the city is sort of crumbling. I mean, there's lots of industrial spaces that are no longer used for industry. There's piers. There used to be like 50 piers down the coast of the city, and now there's like 2. But there's still all these like pylons, right, left over. There's all these hulks of buildings that are empty on the inside that we could just go in and film, and it looks like this kind of leftover industrial. They maybe either packed up yesterday or they packed up 50 years ago, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But it was really fun to kind of find those forgotten spaces because as a vampire, I think that's where you're going, but also. It's like a rotted corpse, the city of Philadelphia becomes sort of that corpse that's left over once you've sucked all the blood out of it in the way a vampire leaves their victim.
Yes. So how long did it take to kind of work out Philly was the spot?
It was suggested early in the process because Chloe, who plays Evian, had lived in Philadelphia for a number of years, and she knew people who were there. So she knew people who could like help out on set, like crew members. But it never was that it had to be set in Philadelphia. Yeah. And I said, well, if we're going to shoot in Philadelphia, like we should look into whether that would be a good place to actually set the film. And so I started doing a lot of research on Philadelphia. And that was when I found out that when they built the subway tunnels, instead of the way a lot of places build subway tunnels where they dig down and then they fill in the subway and then they top it off, they would dig a tunnel and then they would dig another tunnel right next to it. And so they were always supplying the subway from this other tunnel. And when they finished the subway, then they would just leave this other tunnel. So there would be these empty tunnels that go all around the city. And then there were whole lines where they started building the line. And then, 1929 happened and the bottom fell out of the economy. And they're like, well, I guess we won't build this line. But there's like a complete subway station that's built underneath the building, right? And it just doesn't go anywhere because they never built the line out to it. So I found that fascinating. And then, Chloe with her British accent, Philadelphia being this center of American liberty. I was like, well, that's kind of interesting of having an English vampire kind of below this great American city. And then, the more I just researched Philly, the more I was like, I found it fascinating. I didn't know anything about the city ahead of time. And I tried to put as much Philly into the film as possible. Cause I was like, if we're going to shoot there, then I want people who are from Philly to say, okay, this is a Philadelphia movie. And, there's a great history of films from Philadelphia, like Rocky and all the M. Night movies. That there's a great crowd of filmmakers there. And it was fun to kind of play in their sandbox.
Yeah, wasn't Philadelphia at one point vying to be the capital?
I think technically it was the capital at the very start.
For a year or so, for a short period of time before they were like, actually Washington.
Yeah, because they built Washington from scratch. I think it has something to do with that. It was a compromise between the North and the South, that they would put this city that was halfway between all the, the colonies at the time.
So Philly has got a lot of, there's a lot of history there.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice, and I enjoyed spending time there, and they've got some incredible, beautiful old buildings that obviously Independence Hall everybody knows, but there's all sorts of great architecture there. So it was a fun place to spend some time.
I've not been to Philly. That's one spot. I've done New York. I've done bits of Chicago. I've been to like parts of Louisiana, but not Philly. But I do hear it's nice. Yeah. So when you were kind of working out your lore, your vampire, like what your vampires would be like, what did you enjoy consuming, right? And what out of all of the stuff that's out there were you just like, oh well, that stays, right? I really enjoyed that. Like, what was that process like?
I must have watched 200 films over the course of 3 months, just because I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything that people would be coming into the film with in the back of their mind. And there's certain things that obviously I think you would be silly to get rid of, like vampires can't be in the daylight. Okay, well, I mean that's so common in most films that it's like, if you aren't doing that, then you better have a really good reason. And so there would be those kind of things that you wouldn't touch. But then there would be a lot of things with the way they interact with other people that I found fascinating, like whether you're able to enchant somebody else, like True Blood, and the way that they're able to get people to forget things that had happened. And that was something that I was like, oh, well, that makes a vampire really powerful if they're able to, basically erase your mind. And so that idea then started to inform what the script was about, because then the script became about consent. And then you've already got a character who's being kidnapped. When Evian takes Grace down into the sewers and says, you're going to help me save my son who's dying, she doesn't give her any choice. But eventually Grace sort of gets used to it and sort of starts to fall for Evian. So you've got a sense of, Stockholm syndrome playing with a kidnap victim, but also you have playing the whole time this idea of consent and whether the woman who has been kidnapped is really capable of making an informed decision about whether she wants to be down there. And when she says things like, when she starts to fall for her, well, is she really falling for her, or is she just falling for what the vampire, is influencing her to do? So that was a big part of it. And I compared that a lot to like Twilight, which I think, we were definitely wanting a young audience for this film, and to have people who grew up on the Twilight books, that this would be something that they would enjoy, because, we're showing a romance, and there's not a whole lot of films out there where there is a real actual romance taking place with the vampire. And with that in mind, like, well, those vampires, obviously they're all powerful, and, it's almost to a silly extent. But they don't seem to have much in the form of influence over another person. They don't have that ability, or they can kind of turn it on and turn it off. And so that was part of it. But a big part of those books is just like, well, how do you live as a person in a world where you have to be publicly, but then also be a vampire? And so I was like really thinking about that when we see scenes of Evian trying to raise a child in America, like, also in the 1950s when she's trying to like have a doctor come, and it's like, okay, but the doctor has to come after 6 o'clock, because that's sundown, right? Or Henry talks about growing up and how his mother, couldn't go to parent teacher conferences except at night. Like, how could you have a kid? How could you have parent teacher conferences if you can't go to the school?
Yeah.
And so I found those kind of things fascinating. But there were so many films that I watched that influenced more the mood of it. I'm talking a lot about like the films of Jean Rollin in the 1970s and early 80s, films like Fascination and Lips of a Vampire, Shiver of the Vampire, Living Dead Girl, which is kind of a zombie movie, but also, I mean, she does like to eat blood, so kind of vampire movie. And then the films of Jess Franco, and things like Sinner and Diary of an Nymphomaniac and Vampiros Lesbos. Obviously, if I'm making a lesbian vampire film, you'd be silly to not be aware of Vampiros Lesbos. So I think those were some of the movies that I loved growing up, and I wanted to make my version of that kind of film, but also make it from a sort of a modern aesthetic and a modern viewpoint, and really embrace sort of the queer relationships between the vampires, or the vampire and her victim.
Yeah. Did you do Robert Eggers? Yeah, Nosferatu.
Well, that had come out after I finished the film, so I never saw it, but I knew it was coming. So I knew that vampires were, I mean, vampires never go out of style. It seems like, they're every 2 or 3 years you get like a new great vampire film, and which is interesting, because I'm not sure that I'm one of those people, like, I'm not sure if vampires really exist. And I can say that and not sound like Chris, because I'll tell you, I do believe aliens exist, and I do believe they come down to our planet and they take people. I also believe in ghosts, and I believe that ghosts are there, right? So there's a lot of things that I believe in that maybe other people don't believe in. Vampires, I'm not so sure that vampires exist, and yet we still have great vampire movies, every couple years. So no, I didn't get to see that one, but I will say that, I'm a big fan of The Witch. It's everybody who makes horror films, I think, nowadays is, and I loved The Lighthouse. And so kind of, I was thinking about those films a little bit in terms of the sparsity of your location, and to really embrace sort of the tone of how you're going to shoot the film and let it just seep into the whole thing. I love that about his films.
Oh man, I am really, really looking forward to Werewolves.
Yeah.
I think I'm so I watched Nosferatu. I thought it was really good. Now, the problem was like I've got terrible eyesight. I'm registered blind, right? So I can't do subtitles. So I didn't know that over half the film would be subtitled. So I'm in the cinema and I'm just like, there's so much that I was missing. But from what you could actually just see, I think I was still able to follow on for the most part, and I enjoyed what I was seeing. But I'm looking forward to watching it at home so I can pause it and rewind and,
right.
try and follow what the fuck's going on with it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with werewolves.
Yeah. Well, and of course, I love the original Nosferatu, and I love Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like those kind of films. Carl Dreyer's Vampire, like those were films that I really took a lot from. In terms of like when all you have to tell your story is pictures, like you have to get it across so succinctly. And I think so many times dialogue becomes a crutch. And so part of the film for me was, and a lot of this happened during the editing process, was removing dialogue and embracing sort of letting the film live visually and with music. And I love music and cutting a film much like a music video.
Yes, that's very that does actually come out. Yeah, the way it's been cut. That's interesting. I didn't think of that when watching it, but when you say it, it's just like, oh yeah, of course. Cool.
Well, I found that like when you are picking a song, whether it's a temporary piece of music or the music you're going to use in the film, you're not just setting the mood, you're setting the pace as well. The audience is going to hear the beat of the song, and that's going to propel the energy of the scene. And so I took a lot of influence from that, of just like, well, what if I cut on the beat? And there's tons of scenes where even if it's not a scene where the music is in your face, like at a dance club or something, where it would make more obvious of cutting to the beat, I'm still oftentimes making the edit points on a drum beat or on a measure change or on a key change, because I think the audience is going to feel that anyway. So I'm just embracing that. And that gave me another tool when I was in the editing room in terms of, well, how do I shape the scene and what needs to happen? What do I need to see? And you can have two sets of you can have two people in dialogue, and you can cut that scene so many ways in terms of who you see. Do you see them when they're speaking, or do you see them when they're listening? And how much of one person do you show versus the other? So it's just one more tool to have, which is like, well, what if we kind of cut when we're only cutting on a beat, and how does that shape at one point in time in the line? Do you cut from one face to the other? So that I had a lot of fun doing that.
Are there any in particular like editors or people's work that you kind of be like, man, I really enjoyed that, and that was kind of another influence on how you put this together?
I think Steven Soderbergh has always been, he edits a lot of his own stuff, or he works with an editor very closely sometimes. And also he uses a lot of music and really allows himself the chance to take a scene out of time and put it in sort of a music space where it's more important to get like the mood of the song across rather than have the scene cut to the length of the dialogue. So he has always been an influence on me. And I think that comes out too visually too. I have scenes where you get like the panels of like this video happening at the same time as this video. That's a very 70s thing. But it's also like, for me, it's a very Ocean's 11 thing, you know, because I
I
didn't
mean, I was
experience the films of
thinking,
the 70s at the time they came out. So, but I did experience Ocean's 11. So
yeah, I was thinking when I saw that, I was thinking, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. That's the thing that came to mind when I, you know, that kind of effect was happening.
yeah, I think that you know, we have so many tools now with the modern day editing programs that people don't really take advantage of it, and it's easier to do some of the things that they used to do that would take hours upon hours of having, like, you know, 2 or 3 scenes playing simultaneously across the screen. And now you can kind of set that up and create a template. And yeah, it was really fun to get a whole bunch of, you know, B footage and just kind of cut that together as something happening simultaneously with something that's happening on screen that's more of a story moment.
Yeah. I was just thinking about what you said earlier about vampires, and I think a big thing is because vampires do kind of exist, right? Because not the "I'm gonna bite your neck," but the people that like leeches that will drain your spirit, drain your hope, your ambition. Like we've all been around those people, you know what I mean? So it's just like a lot of times it's hard to pinpoint, right? It's hard to, you know, when people be like, oh, your bosses and they're doing this kind of thing, and they're like, oh, just, you know, record the evidence, and you're just like, I mean, how am I recording this? Right? It's difficult to recall. So it's just like when you think about these things, to think of someone biting a neck and draining the blood, right? It kind of like, yes, these are the people that I'm railing against. You know what I mean? I think that's a big thing why vampires are always so popular.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea because I think there are people out there, you know, a vampire is just somebody who takes from someone else everything and gives nothing back.
Yeah.
You know, and it's completely selfish. You're taking somebody's life essence, you're taking their blood, or you're taking everything they have and taking advantage of it and using it for yourself, and then you're moving on and, you know, leaving that carcass behind. And that's, you know, that can be how people act in a relationship. It can be how you use a partner in a business relationship. If you're like taking all their money and exploiting them, it can be, you know, how a boss uses you. It can be how a friend uses you. You know, people can be energy vampires where they come into a room and, like, you know, they just, you know, they want all of the attention and they want everybody to pay attention to them and listen to them, but they're not really giving anything back to the room. You know, you're not learning anything. Yeah, I think the word vampire has this metaphorical meaning that I think is very true in real life. Even if you're not taking someone's blood, you can take everything that they have and leave them nothing in return.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the crazy one, I kind of iteration that I see a lot because of, you know, the podcast, and that is when you're dealing with indie films and you'll have the actors in it and they might use bits of the film in their show reel and all of this, but they do not promote the film. Right? They'll only promote their mainstream Hollywood work. You know what I mean? And even if they were protester number 4, right? They'd be like, I was in that film. But they won't talk about something where they might have been the co-lead or just the lead. And it's so crazy.
Yeah, totally. I can see that. I mean, I think probably most of my actors won't be like that. They were all very excited to be in the film and, you know, very hungry and super talented. And everybody in the film, other than, you know, Robert Picardo, who's the old legend, right? everybody else is very much at that point in their career where they're trying to get noticed and willing to really push the boundaries of, what they can do as an actor. So it was really fun to work with people who were, that excited. But I could totally see that.
Yeah, how was the casting process for you? Like, did you have certain things in mind for the characters, or were you just kind of like watching the auditions and be like, oh, that person, that's the person for this role?
Well, so we always knew that we had Chloe as Evian, our main vampire. So that helped anchor the film in a certain feel. And so we would be able to always audition people with her. So anybody that read for Grace would read with Chloe. So I would get to see kind of how they played off each other, and also what energy they had. And I wanted to have two very different people, because I think relationships are always more interesting the more different the two people are. So that was true for that role. I think for when we were auditioning people for Tempest, I was looking for somebody who, Tempest being like the main bad vampire or the main villain of the film. You always want somebody who thinks the film is about them. The best villain is coming in and considering themselves the protagonist of a version of the film where they are. And so, you need to have that sort of lead character energy, but still willing to understand how your role plays with someone that plays in the larger scheme. And so I was really excited when we found Samantha, who plays the role of Tempest. And once I saw her, then I didn't even want to audition anybody else. And we had open auditions. So we saw a lot of people in the Philadelphia and the New York area. And what was really great about this film is there's a lot of small roles that have, one or two or three lines but they're all fun. They all have like a little bit of a moment. And so I was finding the best actors and just being like, oh, it'll be fun to see what this person brings to this scene. And this bit part, and they're able to come for a day and really just, kill it. And then, or, generally be killed on screen and then leave. So that was really fun. With Robert Picardo, he has always been a favorite actor of mine. I grew up on Star Trek Voyager. That's my Star Trek. It was the Star Trek that played while I was in college. So, I had a list of people that I thought maybe could work as Henry, and he was always at the top of the list. So when, we reached out to him, and he had never been in a vampire movie before. And so that was interesting to him. And he has family in the Philadelphia area. So when he found out that we were shooting there, that, that's something I would always recommend to indie directors. If you are trying to get somebody to be in the film and they're maybe a little bit above the budget ask of normally who you could get, find something that they would be excited to do, whether it's something they've never played or a city that that they have a connection to, and then they wouldn't mind being there for a week because they could do other stuff too. So it fit in really well for his schedule. I think he came in right after a Star Trek fan cruise, so he was on a boat and then came right in, shot the film, and then went back to LA. So it worked out really well with him. And he was a go-getter. Having him on set really made everybody else better. And it was hard to stop myself from just wanting to ask him questions about Star Trek all the time, and be like, no, be focused, you're supposed to be working on this film. Because it was like having a hero there on set.
Interesting. I was a Deep Space Nine person, really, myself, but only once Cisco shaved his head. Because up to that point, he just was a bit of a pussy. You know what I mean? He was just like, he just felt a bit too generic. But then he shaved his head, and it's just like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not doing that. right? Get off my station. And it's like, yes, Carroll's got some personality now. Okay.
I think the thing about that show is like when it started, it's like it's a base, right? So you have to wait for trouble to come to you. And I think after a couple seasons, they were like, no, we're gonna go out and we're gonna find trouble and we're gonna make trouble. And that kind of coincided with that same thing of like being more proactive as the base commander. He was great. Yeah, I loved Deep Space Nine. I never saw that when it was originally on. I just recently watched it. In the last 5 years or so. So I really enjoyed it when I finally
right. Now the interesting thing was at that same time you had Babylon 5, and Babylon 5 was great because Star Trek always did that kind of one and done story. Or, I just remember when I think, was it the Romulans took over Deep Space Nine. That was all like 5 episodes, maybe something like that. It was a very quick war. You know what I mean? But Babylon 5, their stuff, man, it spun like a whole season, right? And it was building, like, and so that was just all very. I love that.
Well, of course, there was the controversy that Babylon 5, that people thought that maybe Deep Space Nine was kind of ripping off Babylon 5. That like it had been, I think it had been pitched to the network, to Paramount, and so then when they started doing Deep Space Nine, people were like, well, wait a minute, because Babylon 5 was on a different network. But the thing about Babylon 5, I've watched it. It's hard to get past some of the special effects. They just haven't aged real well. It's one of the first TV shows to use a lot of CGI.
Yes,
and it just they haven't gone back and it would take a lot of money, I think, to go back and fix all of those. And that's it's always gonna, for some reason, it's aged a lot more poor than than some of the earlier Star Treks, and even like the original Star Trek original series, TOS.
Yeah, I remember seeing an interesting conversation with Stransky, and he was going like he wanted to create more kind of different races and everything, and how in Star Trek it was just a squiggly line and that's a new race, and he was just like, yes, I wanted to, and then he was just like, it got real expensive, man. Like budgets, motherfucker, right? So in the end, you're just like, yeah, a little squiggle, a new race.
I think you're always, as a filmmaker, you have to be very aware of that. I mean, it's certainly just to bring it back to the film. Like we were very aware of what our budget was the whole time, and well, how many murders can we do? Like how many times can a vampire kill somebody and spout blood and rip heads off? And like every time you do that, that's a big day. It's a long time. It's a long shoot, and it's an expensive shoot. And I think you find ways to figure out, like, okay, you find ways to make it work in the budget level that you have, if you can, or else you just say, well, it's close enough. But we always knew that we were shooting our stuff to like have it in post, not a whole lot of CGI. Everything was the practical effects. So we had to get it right in the camera, and that can be expensive, but also you set a little limit and say like, okay, well, maybe we can't have 15 people die in this scene. Maybe we can only have 5, and let's make it work. So I think you just have to be very aware of what your budget restraints are and what the talent is of your team. Like you can come up with the craziest thing on it in a script, but like, how do you explain that to someone else, and how did they make it happen?
Yes. Yeah. It was funny. I spoke to I forget that guy's name now, which is so irritating. My memory can be so bad sometimes. They had a film called Grace Point with Rob Lowe's son in it, and it's a really good film. But he was just like early drafts of the script. It was like this international thing, and there's like helicopter chases, and then it's just like, yeah, we realized that's gonna be super expensive to film, and so you just pare it down. But then when you watch the movie, you're just like, this makes so much sense. And it was so good. So you're just like, I'm so glad that they didn't go that, you know, Fast and the Furious kind of crazier, you know, route, because what we actually got, I think, was a stronger story, you know?
Yeah, sometimes, you know, the restraints that are put on you allow you to make stronger choices, or you make a choice you wouldn't have made, which leads you, you know, to something else that can be exciting.
Yeah. What was the blood creation like for you guys? How did you work out that solution?
You know, it depended on the scene. If it was spurting, I believe it was a different kind of blood than if it was just stationary.
Right.
The biggest scene we had with blood was the death of Tempest, our evil, right? And I remember that being like a whole, like 2 milk jugs worth of blood, and like goopy blood. Like, I wanted to make sure that the blood didn't look like it was too watery. I wanted it to be thick. But it also, like, to me, it wasn't as important that it look perfectly like real blood, you know, because you watch all these old movies from the 70s and most of the stuff doesn't look like real blood, you know. And so you know, I would consciously, we had a, you know, the opening scene, there's a death. We don't see the death, but we see a character covered in blood, and that looks pretty real. But then right after that, when I went to the title screen, I was like, well, what if we just have a wall where we just like drip blood down it, and we see and you know, and that's just going to set the tone. And you know, somebody had like a note for me at the start, which was like, well, it doesn't really look like blood. I was like, yeah, that's the point. The point is, I'm telling you, like, look, this is the world you're going to be in. This is blood. This is what it is. This is what our blood looks like. You know, like, I think audiences have gotten so hung up on things like that. Like, it's almost like the closer you try to get to real, the more they hold you to it. Whereas if you are saying from the very beginning, like, look, this is a movie, it's fun, and not everything is exactly, you know, then people are a little more willing to just relax and enjoy it and lean back. So yeah, you know, we just made the blood. I think that was at the start, it was red paint with a little, with a little orange in it, and then a little bit of water just to water it down. But it was just paint dripping down a board, you know. And then you know, then you'd go to color processing, and you just try to, like, you know, color time it in such a way that you make it look more like blood, or at least make it look like it looks like it belongs in that world.
Yeah. I think there is something to that, right? Because when, you know, when people are trying to go, this is super serious, this is super realistic, and you're watching it and you're being like, yeah, but it's not though, right? It's hard to kind of, you know what I mean, connect with it. But when you're just like, yeah, we're gonna take some liberties, you're like, all right, cool, let's go. You know what I mean? You can just suspend your belief more with that thing.
Yeah, I was really influenced by a recent film called The Love Witch, which was made about 5 years ago, and it was about a woman who was a witch and was enchanting men back to her house and killing them one by one, and then hiding the bodies. And it has a very strong, like, 60s feel to it, but also the whole time you're watching it, it doesn't feel like it's real.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like some sort of gritty, you know, CSI, we're gonna find out who murdered these people. You know, it's just, it has a much more kind of open-ended enjoyment to it. You know, like, even you watch the Hitchcock movies, like a lot of the investigations in Hitchcock, they're not super gritty. Like, Psycho isn't about figuring out what happened to Janet Leigh. It's not, yeah, there's a private agent who shows up and asks some questions, but in general, it's not the way you would really conduct a crime scene, right? So but that's not what matters. That's so I really wanted to just have the film be enjoyable, and so that's why we don't actually have any real cops in the film. We have a fake cop, and we have somebody who thinks she's a vampire hunter, because I want to be in that world where
no, Slayer.
Vampire Slayer. Pardon me. Exactly. Exactly. She really wants you to know she's not just hunting them; she is slaying them. And in a world where you could declare yourself a vampire slayer, and grabs a bow and arrow, and then from Walmart, and then go track down vampires. That's the world that I wanted to be in.
Oh my gosh, yes. I hear they're remaking Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Again.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that's a great example though of both the film and the show, where it's like, well, I mean, the film more than the show, they didn't pretend that we were in the real world so much.
Yeah.
It was more about no, just have fun with it,
Yes, definitely.
Paul Rubens, I miss him. When he has he has one of the best turns in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, when he dies 7 times.
Yeah. I did enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
I think I preferred the movie to the TV show.
Yeah. I'm that person too. But I also I'm not sure I have patience for 5 seasons of something.
Yeah, and I just found the characters irritating.
It's it's a high school. I mean, it's a teen drama, so it's always going to be Dawson's Creek first, and then a horror movie second. Whereas same thing with Twilight. It was always going to be a romance novel first, and the vampire movie second. And I wanted our film to be a vampire movie first, and then second, probably a queer love story, and then third, a movie left over from the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the big thing. And it was like that. I remember trying Smallville back in the day, because I was, oh man, I used to do some event work in the music industry, and I was out, so I was doing that and doing accounting during the day, and literally I'd get home at 5, maybe get an hour's sleep, if an hour, because I'm not that person, head on the pillow, fall straight asleep. But yeah, I'm up at 6, shower, out to the office. So no sleep at all for a year. And then so I got super ill at the end of the year. And so I'm in bed, New Year's Day, Smallville comes on. And so I'm like, all right, I'll give this a go. But it was just I could never get into it, because it was always, I can't tell my friends I'm Superman because they'll be in danger. But every week they're getting kidnapped. So right. I'm just they're in danger anyway. It doesn't even matter. I just tell them who the fuck you are.
Yeah, they may have been a little too loyal to the original Superman, franchise, that idea that nobody knew that he was Superman growing up.
Yeah. Although Lois Lane is meant to be a Pulitzer winning journalist, so the fact that she can't figure out glasses, no glasses, right? Yeah. It's just
well, she's not a super strong female character in any version that I've seen, except maybe in Supergirl. If you watch Supergirl on the CW, they started to actually, I think, give characters a little bit more of a spine.
Okay,
make them less stupid.
They definitely give. I think they give Lois a bit more gumption in the new film.
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. I look forward to it.
Yeah, I think if you enjoy that kind of thing, you probably dig it. It might be the best iteration, so far. There's bits that I didn't quite vibe that didn't make any sense to me, but
Well,
I feel
I grew up on Christopher Reeve, so he'll always be my Superman, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
everything is going to be compared to that. But I get the need to reinvent these things in the same way. I'm wanting to reinvent vampires. Everybody's got to reinvent whatever their favorite thing is for a new generation. And fortunately, audiences are either willing to just keep going and like get experience, get exposed to a new version, or we're always finding new audiences and they don't know the old version.
yeah. Well, I think there's only so many stories, kind of, right? So it's always what's someone else's spin on this thing, And
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
ages, we've only had, it's kind of only certain people are allowed in the room to tell a certain story, right? Because I remember John Singleton came to London and he gave a
Mhm.
talk. Right, they screened. Uh, oh my god, Jesus Christ, my memory is so bad.
It's
They screened his film, and then he did a talk, and it was fantastic. But
Boys in the Hood.
yes, thank you,
Okay.
Jesus Christ. But he was talking, going like, I was bringing stories to the studio, and they're like, we want another gangster story, we want another hood story, and so it's just like for years, like people had their hands tied on what they could
Mhm.
do. So it's always interesting when we get someone new going, I'm going to give you my take on what this thing is. You know what I mean? I mean, that's always an interesting thing. So it was just like, what is Bears Rebecca's take on vampires? Like, because I didn't, I think I know vampires can beguile and all of that kind of thing, right? I read a few of the Anne Rice books back
Mhm.
in the day because I thought that first interview of the vampire, I thought that was great. I
Mhm.
really enjoyed the heck out of that. I thought that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really good. I mean, the Aaliyah one, those weren't, what I mean? Let's forget about those. But the interview was great. And so I knew the beguiling thing. I didn't think about some of the things you did at the very end. You know what I mean? Like with the
Mhm.
cop and that, but is it, all of that kind of stuff. I was just like, but then you go, actually, I mean, it makes sense. But I'd never thought that it could go that far.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So you come when you do different people tell different stories, you get these things and you'll be like, oh yes. Yeah, okay. It's like, with Alaska, you're like, oh, right. So you get to see these new things, right? These new ideas, which is always interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, people were like, "Oh, why make a vampire film? Why make a vampire film that feels like it's a vampire from the 1970s?" Well, because I haven't gotten to make one, because I didn't get to make a 70s vampire film. This is my version of that. And I'm not sure how many lesbian vampire films have been made by queer people. I mean, there is a titulation aspect to a lesbian vampire film that's always been present when they get made. I don't know how many times that somebody has made it and saying like, well, I have something to say about queer relationships by telling a vampire love story, because in the same way people have hidden relationships because they're queer. Hide relationship because you're in a relationship with a vampire. I
Mm,
think it can mean the same thing, and you can be in relationships, like you said, with somebody who is a vampire, and it's not a, it's not a blood-sucking vampire. It's someone who's taking all your energy. And I think that happens all the time when someone's in a hidden relationship where somebody is taking everything and they're like, okay, but you just stay over there. I
yeah.
need you to not be somebody who comes to work with me. And I don't want to have your picture on my desk, but I want to come home to you and have you cook for me and everything
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. I mean, like, vampires were always, essentially kind of queer anyway, right? Because you've got guys biting guys' necks, right? Like sucking on another dude. You know what I mean? Like girls biting girls. Like it was always just like, it's a smorgasbord of you know what I mean, bloodlust right
Yeah,
here.
I mean, even going back to the original Universal Dracula, I mean, the people have written about the queer relationship in there between Renfield and Dracula, and I think it's present in the original Bram Stoker novel. I mean, I think he's very much playing with Victorian Britain and their feeling on. I mean, we're talking at the same time when they're locking up Oscar Wilde in jail for being queer, but his plays are playing everywhere, and so yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think the thing was, right, but especially back then, it's like everything's going on, but just keep it in the shadows, son. Like, don't
Shadows.
don't put it in front of our faces. Keep it on the low. You know what I mean? But then a few people are just like, I don't want to hide this, and then just like, no, jail with you. You know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. With the film, right? There is nudity in here. So, what was when you're filming, like? How are you thinking, let me construct this scene, right? So, you know what I mean? It's not crazy, but it has that titillation, but it's still very story focused. So, what was that aspect of this like for you?
Well, from a practical standpoint, I brought an intimacy coordinator in to work with from the very beginning. So everything that we wanted to do, I told her ahead of time, like, this is what the scene is, this is what I want to see. And she would work out with the actors to make sure they were comfortable, but also like the best way to shoot that. And so that, where do you put the camera and make all those decisions ahead of time. But with the actors, the big part is like, well, what is your character trying to accomplish in this scene? Every time you are in an intimate relationship, in an intimate moment with somebody, is it the first flush of like getting to be with somebody, or is it about giving yourself over to someone and showing them that you want them, that you trust them? Is it that's a big part, with this movie? Is it about like showing somebody that like, no, I'm the one in charge, and then I'm going to be in charge of the bedroom too? So I think that you have to keep the characters going into the scene. You don't just stop the characterization, because then you have a sex scene. That's how sex scenes end up being not really a good part of a film sometimes, is if they're not thought of as being part of the storytelling. But it has to be just a continuation of the development between the two characters.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. You know what I mean? And that it's always a bit odd sometimes when you watch a film and you've got the characters kissing, and then it just cuts to them in bed, right after the fact. But you'll have the dude underneath the covers, and then the girl sitting there with her breasts out, and you're just like, well, this is a weird, picture that we're seeing here. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, why would he be under the covers and her not under the covers?
I
You
just
know what I
think
mean?
we're just, we're so hung up on nudity in America, and so, and in the modern age, it just was so much easier in the 70s. People don't care about stuff like that, like, you just let things evolve, and I'm hoping that someday we'll start to be okay with sex again.
Yeah, I mean, there was a show, an early HBO show called Rome. It was so good. It only went 2 seasons. I really enjoyed the heck out of it. But there was not a load of nudity in it, but there was nudity in it, and there was full frontal male nudity in it, which was crazy for the time, right? Now, I remember reading the place it was most censored, and this shocked me, was Italy. Because I thought they might be the freest ones with it all. You know what I mean? Because you have more nudist beaches in a lot of European countries and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was the UK didn't edit it as much. The US edited a little bit more, but Italy was the place that edited it the most.
No idea. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
That was another useless fact from Kevin Scott.
Oh.
Oh man, like when you were making this film, right? What was there, like, you got the script and everything like that, and you're just like, I can't wait to film this one death scene or this one scene? Was there what was that for you? Without, if we can say without spoilers and all of that jazz.
I think it was filming in and around Philadelphia. There's like a montage sequence where we get out into the night, and we see the vampire, sort of what she does when no one else is watching. And that it was a small crew. It was just like three of us going about catching little moments. And I always find that really fun. And so that's what I was most looking forward to, is like getting some of Philadelphia on film. And then I was just really excited to see what the sets were going to be. I had this idea of what, where we were going to, I had the $1 million idea of what we could build if we had all the money. And then there's, what you end up with. But, I just wanted to get underground and to see what that was going to feel like, and to get in those tunnels. And that to me was, because so much of the mood of the film is that set of like, okay, now we're going down and we're going underneath and we're going into her world. And so I was excited to get down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that must have been interesting. Yeah, like, as I said, this is your second feature, and it had been, I think 2010 was I Crime, right? So, 16 years late. No, 15. Wait, it's 20. What?
2025, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
I mean, we I think I Crime actually came out in it was done in 2009, so it really is 16 years later. Yeah.
Right.
We just didn't debut
yet. That helps. I didn't forget what year it was. Thank you, Bears Rebecca. I appreciate that.
I never thought it would be that long. Honestly, I never thought it would. But I started working at film festivals and had a day job, and it's one thing to be able to jump away for a week and shoot a short. It's another thing to take on a feature where you're going to be probably shooting for at least half a month, probably a month if you're lucky, and then following it through with the editing and the post-production process. It's a lot of time, and so it took a long time before I really felt like I could do that. And then you got to find the right project, and you got to have the money, and this film is, by the seat of our pants. We got a little bit of money from some other people, but most of it is, the money that I saved from my, during COVID and getting an unemployment check for several months and not needing it and just setting it aside, So that's where a lot of the money comes from. So who knows? And unless we have another plague that we're beset by, I may not get to make another feature.
Yeah, it's getting the money is always that difficult situation, which is kind of crazy, right? But it'd been a minute, right, from the first to this, but now it's done. Like, was the process what you thought it might be? Right? Like, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, do you think you were able to fully exercise, stretch those muscles that you hadn't been able to work for all this time?
I feel like, I'd made a bunch of shorts, and each short that I made, I felt was more like understanding what my style was and what my aesthetic was. And
Mm,
so coming into this feature, my biggest goal was to make sure that I was able to capture what I had been capturing in my shorts and do it and without like putting too much negotiation and compromise into a feature.
yeah.
And I think that I hopefully the audience will reflect that back to me. But I think that I did. I think that this film feels very much like the gritty sort of queer, sexy world that I like to put into my films and my short films that have played a bunch of festivals around and such. But it's my first film that I wrote, directed, and am taking out to the festival since I came out as trans. So my last film, my last short I made was I shot it in the closet and then came out and then put it out. So this is like kind of, this is my first film where it's fully me out there.
Mm.
And I'm excited for people to see it. And, there's so much of me in this film. So I'm excited for that.
Uh-huh. So do you think you have a Bears Rebecca voice yet? Because I think whenever anyone starts, whatever it is, writing, directing, music, I mean, it's always interesting with I don't know if you read comic books, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's when you see, like, you've got a big artist now, like let's say Mark Bagley did a great job on Ultimate Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be like, oh man, Mark Bagley's work is so good. And then you see early Mark Bagley, right? And you'll just be like, oh, that's so different, right? Or it's just, there's oftentimes you'll see someone's art, right? Like oh god, I can't think of, it's one guy, he did a lot of work with CrossGen, but you see their early work and it's a bit like John Romita Jr. or Senior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be like, oh right, and you'd be like, yeah, well, that makes sense because those were their influences, right? So when they're starting, they're like, I want to be like this person, and then over time they find their own voice, right? So it can take a minute, right? Some people have their voice out the gate, right? It's a rare thing, but some people do, but it's going to take a minute. But do you think, right? It's your second film, but as you said, you've done a lot of shorts, but do you think you're getting to the essence of that Bears Rebecca voice?
I think that it's close, and I think that this was the perfect film for me to kind of develop that. I think I won't know until I make another feature. Like I think that the key will be like, okay, now that I know what this is and what it can be over the course of a whole film, because that's very
Mm,
different. You can do so much more over the course of a whole film than you can do in a short.
yeah.
I think that my next feature will be the one where I can really tell if I can take the lessons that I've learned doing this and make that my style. And my next feature, I'm hoping it'll be a ghost story. I've got a screenplay written, and so I
Ooh.
want to go play in that genre. But it's there's not too many sexy ghost stories, so I'm like, I have to figure out like, okay, well, how do I get ghost sex in there? So.
Hey, I mean, gosh, when was it? I believe it was before the pandemic. I believe it was. There was a woman that was just like she married a ghost.
Like a real
And
person?
yeah, a real person
Oh
was
my.
like she married, I think there's a couple of podcasts, right? I think one's The Bonfire and one is The Thing is Shannon Lee Hire. It's her podcast, and
Mhm.
it's a lot of fun. Um and I think she's, because they cover like ghosts and a few, I forget, it's three different things, but ghost is part of it. And yeah, there was a woman that I think she got divorced because she was having an affair with a ghost.
Wow. No,
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah. So hey, there's been sex with ghosts supposedly.
Clearly, I mean, unless they never consummated the marriage.
Oh man, yeah, a ghost story. Okay, like how far in are we with
The
this?
script's written and the budget is being worked on. So it's really the hope would be with this film that seeing what we did and seeing our festival run, that somebody says that's awesome, I want to come in and help you with some of the money so it doesn't have to be all my own. That sort of thing. I'm hoping that that this film will lead to the ghost film. So
location wise,
Texas, I think it's set in Texas, but I don't know if I want to go back to Texas. I lived there for a long time. Maybe I'll find a way to shoot it in Canada since that's where I'm living now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, ghosts in Canada, right? That can work.
Yeah.
Are there other genres that you kind of wouldn't mind playing in?
I mean, I'm a sci-fi person, like by birth. I always love sci-fi, so it's odd that I keep doing horror films. But I think you can get. It seems like you can get so much more gritty and sexy in horror films than you can in sci-fi. So I don't know. I'll have to figure out how to do it in sci-fi.
I remember there was a sci-fi show back in the day. I think it was called Lex, that was being hailed as this, like, sexy sci-fi.
No, I don't know that one.
I think it was a German show, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I couldn't. I tried it and I just couldn't get into it. But yeah,
well, we have so many options nowadays. It's very easy, like if you're not into something in the first episode, you can just move on, and that's the problem.
Oh man, yeah. There's so many.
That's why I'd rather make a feature. I'd rather make another feature than make like a TV series, because I feel like TV series, like, also you get people at home and they're like on their phones and they're not really paying attention, right? So I think with the movie, there's at least that idea that somebody might be like, that might be their main choice of what they're going to do, and they might not, they might not be second screening it.
Yeah. And I guess you can do the festival run, right? Like, you can't really do a festival run with a TV show.
Yeah, no. I mean, sometimes people do it with
just the pilot.
With the pilot, yeah. But if the pilot's self-contained, I can see that working.
Yeah, but yeah, I think a film is always good.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's I'm interested. I'm interested, Bears Rebecca.
Well, I will let you know as soon as I've got something else. Hopefully it'll be not 16 years, because I don't have that kind of time. But you get a lot of ideas pent up in a long time. I have tons of screenplays ready to go. It's just a question of what. I have a superhero story too that I wrote, that is like a very low budget superhero idea, like a small superhero, and it's you just, whatever is going to be the thing that you're most passionate about when the opportunity comes up. And right now, after this, I don't know, we'll see. That the ghost story is very much another story between about a relationship, and this is about a relationship that is breaking up, and when a ghost enters into that mix, how does that kind of affect the crumbling of a marriage? So I don't know. I hope that we can find something as evocative as the subways of Philadelphia to set it, because that was such an inspiration for this film.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting. Definitely be interesting. But it's good. You've got all of this stuff, right? You've got these scripts. Because I think the key thing, and you often hear it, right, when you're talking with directors and writers and everything like that. It's just like, hey, well, we had this in mind, but the opportunity was there to do this. Right. So it's just like, if you don't have any scripts, you can't seize any opportunities.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just like sometimes people moan and bemuse the fact that I can't do what I want to do, but you're not even ready to do that thing. You know what I mean? So it's just like, be ready. And it sounds like you're ready. So yeah, we'll see what's next.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin. It's been so great to talk to you. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, no worries at all. I appreciate you stopping by, man. Like I appreciate Brad and Rosa for setting this up. And it'd be interesting to see where everything goes for you.
Are you in London?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Well, I used to come to London every couple of years to go to the London Sci-Fi Film Festival. So hopefully next time I get out there, maybe we can get a drink.
Yeah. You mean Sci-Fi London, Louis Savvy?
Yeah, Sci-Fi London, Louis. Yeah.
Louis great, man.
Almost all of my shorts have played there. I wanted to send him this one, but I'm like, I don't know, vampires. It's not really sci-fi, so.
Yeah, when was the last time you had a short at Sci-Fi London?
It was in 2018. Yeah.
2018.
Yeah, it was about a woman who had a baby from an alien.
I don't know, because I think I started the podcast I forget if it was 2017 or 18. But yeah, I don't think I think I started covering Sci-Fi London in 2019, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think was covering it when you had something there. But yeah, no, Sci-Fi London it's great, man.
Yeah, it's a good time. So
yeah, it was awesome. Awesome. Well, when you do a sci-fi, send it through, and Sci-Fi London. But yeah, when you're in London, hit me up. And
awesome. Yeah, we'll do.
Grab a drink. But this has been great.
Thank you
for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun conversation, being able to talk about how how deep the dark goes. You know what I mean? And I think we kind of got an idea on how far darkness can go. All right.
Hopefully you get a sense of it, and then watch the movie, and then you really know.
But that's where let everyone know how they can keep track of you, see the film, and all of that jazz.
Yeah, the best way would be to follow us on Instagram. Real 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 Rain Productions is the name of the company, and also hashtag How Far Does the Dark Go?
Outstanding, people. If you want some vampire action, then go check out How Far Does the Dark Go. Go follow Bears Rebecca to find out what might be next. Is it ghosts? Is it, I don't know, sci-fi? What are we gonna do? But hey, thank you for your time, and I hope to have another conversation with you soon.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.